Hello, welcome to Buzzin' with Cousins, Cousin Talk. I'm your host, Cousin Johnny Aliotti. We're going to be connecting with some locals today. I got a great show planned. Hope you enjoy it. And let's get started. We're going to start off. This gentleman is wearing a lot of hats. He's the county assessor. He owns SLV Management Company. He's on the board of Guitars Not Guns, and he's a coordinator of the Westend Celebration. Welcome, Steve Vagnini.
Hey, Cuz.
Hi, Steve. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. You're
How you doing today?
I'm good. Shelter in place. We have to wear our
Great.
mask.
I hope everybody's safe.
Yep.
I think we might be okay.
All right.
But yeah, Steve, I really thank you for coming to the show. And a lot of people that don't know you, where did you grow up and how'd you end up in Monterey?
Well, I grew up in Frankfurt, Germany. I was born there. I lived first 8 years of my life. I moved to Virginia when I was 8 years old. And I lived there for the next 7 years, lived in Greece a couple of years, and I went to college in Virginia. And after I finished college, I thought I was going to teach at a girls' school, Santa Catalina. So I came out here with my girlfriend, moved to Monterey, and never left. That was 40-some years.
Great. I remember Steve had a bookstore over there at Heritage Harbor, and I wandered in one day, 30, 40 years ago, and we've been friends ever since.
We've been cousins ever since.
That's right. Steve, I want to talk to you. What was that, Steve?
You got a little schnapps there?
Yep. Actually, a little coffee, a little touch of brandy. But anyway, Steve, I wanted to, it's kind of weird with this pandemic and things have been canceled or whatever, but I want to talk about one of the best community events probably in California. Art, music, fun, food, the Westend Celebration. Let's talk about the Westend Celebration. When did it start? I know it's in Sand City. And how did you get involved in it?
Well, it started 19 years ago. It was a very small festival that took part on the lower western side of Ortiz Avenue. And one of the founding fathers was Greg Hawthorne, along with several other local artists in Sand City. And I had been working with Greg Hawthorne for years, putting on a lot of parties for him down at his gallery in Big Sur with a Broadway band. So they decided they wanted to have music. So Hawthorne called me up and said, "Hey, would you like to do the music for the Westend Celebration?" And I'd never heard of it. You know, it had 1 year before. It was very small. So I said, sure. So I started doing the music ever since. And then about 9 years ago, I took over the overall coordination for the whole event. But so 19 years, 18 years I've been involved. It's just been such a great experience working with all the people in Sand City, the council, the artists, the residents. It's really a great community. Nothing like it in Monterey County, much less most parts of California. It's a very unique little community.
Well, Sand City is becoming an artist haven. I mean, there's quite a few studios there. It's a great artist haven. I remember when I used to go a few years back, it was only one day. Now it's actually you do a kickoff party on Friday, and then on Saturday you had it for one day. Now you've got the kickoff in 2 days, so it's gotten a lot bigger, and is great.
Yeah, it's an interesting story how it became a 3-day event, if you will, counting the kickoff. but we were just a Friday and Saturday. And this was 10 years ago. And I'd been trying to get Los Lobos to play for a long time. And lo and behold, they were willing to come and play and meet with all the Guitars Not Guns kids and everything. But they could only do it on that Sunday because they had a gig in up at Mountain Vineyards on a Saturday. So I said, I go talk to the council members and said, listen, we can get Los Lobos, but they're going to have to play Sunday. So we're going to have to expand the festival into a 3-day event. And they said, why not? So it became sort of like our signature performance right there. I don't know if you remember Los Lobos played where
I remember.
thousands of people. It was
When they played La Bamba, everybody went crazy.
went
They had
crazy.
the conga line was going all the way up and down. Yeah.
And there's a lot of videos of that day too. Los Lobos actually made a recording of it. You can find it on their website of their performance at that Sand City Westend Celebration. And what was unique about it, before they played, they met with over 100 kids up at Sand City Hall and talked to the kids for a half an hour about the importance of going to school and getting an education and how they. So, yeah, we were very fortunate, and it's been a 3-day event ever since.
Yeah, I was there. Actually, I've been to quite a few events, and that was one of the ones that I always remember. Also, the way they were there and they helped the kids out, and it was really great. It was awesome. Those guys are cool. I like to see them come back one day, Steve.
I've been working on it. You never know. We'll bring them back one of these days.
So, Steve, how many concessions would you say? You got 3 stages, and
yeah, as you know, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. Last year, we had about 200 spaces. When I say 200 spaces, some vendors have more than one space. So I think there's about 125 artists, and then about 25 to 30 food vendors. Then you got your wine tents and your beer tents, and there's about 25 local nonprofits. So, whereas it started off in the very first one, I think there was like 8 booths. Over the time, it's just got bigger and bigger. And this year, it looked like we were going to branch out to a whole nother side of the street. The applications were pouring in. It was just, it was poised to be even bigger ever yet. And of course, COVID put the kibosh on that, like every other event in the community, unfortunately.
Hopefully next year we'll be back at it again. Is there what do you do to qualify to get a booth? Do you have to be an artist, or how does that work?
Well, that's one thing that makes the Westend Celebration, in my opinion, unique, is that not only do you have all of the vendors have to have their original art. So you can't buy things from other countries and sell them at the event. We may have a few rare exceptions, but they're original artists, and you can be a painter, a sculptor, a glass blower, woodworker. People do anything. There's crafts too. So it's not just fine arts. You get some amazing different types of things, but the whole criteria is that it's original artwork, and that's what I think makes it unique, as a lot of festivals will accept pretty much anything.
Is there a theme to every year? Do you have a new theme to the Westend, or?
We do have a theme every year, and this year's theme I'm going to carry over to next year, I think, because it was such a good theme. And it was really relevant for the times. This year's theme was Art is Healing.
Yeah, healing. Yeah.
Healing. And if there's ever a time that we need healing, I think it is today.
That's for sure.
In so many different ways. Even before the pandemic hit, we were in need of healing. Because as you know, there's been a lot of divisiveness throughout the country. So Art is healing, and I think we'll probably stick with that next year as well.
Art is healing. I think that's great, Steve. I really do. And while you're here, let's talk a little bit about the guitars and not guns. Tell us a little bit about that, will you?
Yeah, well, it's obviously a passion of mine, and it's the West End is a big fundraiser for Guitars Not Guns. And about 10, 11 years ago, Todd Kruper, who was on the city council and a Sand City artist, and Deirdre Bascu, who was the event coordinator prior to me, were thinking of a Friday night band to play for the kickoff party. So we went to see the White Album Ensemble at the Golden State Theater because we had heard great things about them. So we go to the show, and it's a fundraiser for Guitars Not Guns Santa Cruz. And we go, wow, what a great organization this is. We got to start one in Monterey County. So I contacted the state chapter president, talked to the founders, Ray and Louise Nelson, and within a month we started a chapter. We met out at Rancho Cielo where we started our first classes. And, 10 years later, we're the most active chapter in the United States. We've given away close to 3,000 guitars plus free guitar lessons to kids all around the community. And, I'm on the national board now, and big part of the growth. And unfortunately, not only have festivals been derailed because of COVID, but classroom, schools have had to shut down. So as a result, our Guitars Not Guns on classes have pretty much come to a halt. However, we're starting to do online classes now. So we're starting to roll out that the Steinbeck Library had a classroom setting. We're teaching those kids online. We have online classes at Peacock Acres. We're trying to set one up at the Youth Center. So that's what we're going to have to do for the next 6 months to a year. We're just going to have to go to an online format so we can keep teaching kids how to play guitar.
I think that's great now with the home schooling that child could learn how to play guitar.
Yeah, kids need, you're absolutely right, cousin. Kids need something now more than ever.
Steve, is there an age group? Is it all the way up to 18 or for a student?
All the way to 18. We've had some kids, it's 8 to 18, but every once in a while we not sneak in, but we've had some kids, younger than 8. And what was unique about our Steinbeck Library class is it was a family setting. So the kids would bring their parents in. The parents would come in on the weekends and play guitar with their children. So it was a real family experience. And
yeah. Can anybody? Is there like an income cap or for families? No. Anybody?
No. Anybody can come. Anybody can come. It's for at-risk youth technically, but in my opinion, all children are at risk. Most of the kids that do come have never played guitar, never had music lessons. So we accept every kid. And the sad thing is that Marina was really the best thing around because they met every week. Most of our classes are 8 weeks. They take a break, then they go to level 2, another 8 weeks. But in Marina, all year round classes going. We had beginners, intermediate, advanced all year round. Some kids had grown up to be started their own bands. Some kids were coming back to teach other kids. So we're not going to give up. We're going to keep doing it and just trying to sort things out. And everything's, when it gets back to normal, not only will we have classes in the classroom, but we'll also continue online for kids that can't make it to the classroom. So we'll be better for this, I believe.
How many volunteers would you say you have? And are you accepting more teachers?
We always use volunteer instructors. I'd say, we've got about a total of 20 plus volunteer instructors that come and go. You know, probably of them, 12 of them are really hardcore active, then another 10 that come and go and teach classes every once in a while. But we got 12 instructors that have been with us since day one, and you know, they're regular. So it's a good group of people. That's what makes Guitars Not Guns unique, is it's all volunteer. Nobody gets paid. The executive, there is no paid staff. Nobody gets paid. We spend all our money on the guitars and on the kids.
Helped a lot of at-risk students turn it around.
Absolutely.
Steve, really take my hat off to you and your staff and your volunteers for doing what you do, helping this beautiful community of ours. You're a busy man, Steve. I'm going to let you go. And I really appreciate you coming on. And thank you for buzzing with Cousin.
And Cousin, I want to thank you for everything you do for the community. And I wish you well on Cousin Talk. I hope this is the first of many, many Cousin Talks. And once again, from the bottom of my heart, I love you, Cuz. I love what you do for the community. Keep on doing it.
So far, the speakers are working. The monitors are working. So far, everything's good. So I haven't spilled my coffee. So let's let it ride. Okay, Steve, have a great day. Thank you so much.
All right, Cuz. You take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, that was great. I love Steve. Before I introduce our next guest, I'd like to do a shout out. I like to plug a restaurant or an establishment. Alioti's Victorian Corner, serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner in an old world atmosphere since 1972, located at 541 Lighthouse Avenue. Now serving in their new outdoor patio. Beautiful out there. Weather's nice. Go check them out. Have breakfast, grab a mimosa, have lunch, enjoy one of their old Sicilian family recipe dinners. Call 372-4641. Tell them Cousin sent you. Okay. All right, I'd like to introduce you to our next guest. Monterey historian Tim Thomas. Welcome to the show, Tim. How you doing today?
I'm doing okay there, Cousin.
Thank you for coming to the show.
Sure.
I met Tim 1984 when we worked at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, 1984 when it opened up.
Hanging back there in the bar, yeah.
Yep. So we've known each other for a while. And one thing about Tim is he's keeping our Monterey history alive. And every time I see him, I pick his brain, and he's walking down the street, and I'll yell out of my car, who owned the Persing or the Del Mar, or who did this? And he'll yell it out. Yeah, that was whatever, Russo. But anyway, so Tim, you're local Monterey, right? Or you are Pacific Grove?
Right, Pacific Grove.
Okay, great. Let's go Breakers. What got you interested in the Monterey history? We need more people like you around.
Well, actually, for me, because as you noted, I grew up here. Actually, I'm a fourth generation native of the Monterey area. And I'm 66, I'll admit my age. When I was going to school, elementary school, they didn't teach us our local history. I mean, today it's required, but then it was not. And I was always fascinated in the local history. So it wasn't until much later I started to really learn that part of it.
That's really great. I know that a lot of people don't know this, that the Chinese was a big influence in the Monterey Peninsula. And sure. I want to talk about the Chinese influence on the peninsula. When did they arrive here? And
Well,
was
Chinese families first arrived here, and that's important, the family part, arrived here probably around 1852 or 1853. There were actually three families that sailed across the North Pacific in three small 30-foot junks, probably from the Canton area. They were what they call boat people. They're people who actually lived on their boats all their lives. And there was a lot of political strife at that time in China. And there were also opium wars and things going on. And so they left. And there's actually a series of currents that'll push them all the way across. The Chinese call that the black tide or the big drain. Comes out somewhere near Cape Mendocino, Northern California, and then they turned right, sailed on the California coast, actually overshot Monterey, ended up in Mexico, had to turn around and fight these currents back, which is very difficult. They finally land out initially at Point Lobos, where they were taken in by a Rumsian. The Rumsian were the Indian people of Monterey, who took them into their village there and nursed them back to health. And when they got healthy, they looked onto the bay and said, hey, nobody's fishing out there. And the reason nobody's fishing out there, because at that time there was no way to get fresh fish to the big markets like San Francisco, because the railroad hadn't arrived here yet. So the Chinese, and this is very important, understood the technology of drying of their fish, and that was a really big deal. They're drying all of their catch, which is dry all of their fish. Then once a month or so, a big Chinese junk would come down from San Francisco and pick up all that dried fish, and they'd ship it back to China. They'd ship it to other Chinese camps along the West Coast here. But here's a really cool thing. They were also selling fresh fish to the local citizens here in Monterey. So they actually brought an economy here. So around 1854, so another wave of them come, and they settle about where the Monterey Bay Aquarium is today, Hopkins Marine Station, in Pacific Grove, and become the largest Chinese fishing village on the West Coast.
That was at Hopkins, yeah. How many residents do you think there was there?
Well, there were actually at one point one time there were 4 villages in Monterey. That was the largest of the villages. It was the one at Hopkins.
Right.
And what makes it important is it was made up of families. And Monterey is the only place that we know of where they brought their families with them. All the other Chinese coming to California mid-19th century, mostly single men, coming to work in the railroads, coming to work in the gold fields. These guys came here to fish, and they came here like they knew what was here. And there are historians that I know who believe the Chinese are in California as far back as the 5th century. They certainly had the ships, and they had the skills, and they had the technology, so they could have been. We just don't know. I probably will never know that for sure. But that village in Pacific Grove was, by the way, that village was named Point Alones. And Point Alones on an old map actually is about where the deck of the Monterey Bay Aquarium is today.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah. Now I know that at the Museum of Natural History in Pacific Grove, they have a beautiful model of that, detailed model of that village. And if anybody ever has a chance, whenever they open up, go check it out. It's really intriguing. They've got the ladders up, the boats.
Yeah, Michael Croft's the model maker.
Yeah, he's very detail orientated. And then Tim, something happened, right? There was a fire or something happened there, or what?
Before we get to that, let's talk about it. So the Chinese were fishing because there was no real competition out there. There were Portuguese whalers that came here around the same time as they did. But they weren't competing for the same thing. The Chinese were not whalers, so there really wasn't any issue. But in 1874, the Monterey-Salinas Valley Railroad arrived, which was a locally owned railroad. And the idea of that railroad was to be able to ship grains from the Salinas Valley and to bring tourism to the Monterey area. But you got a railroad. Now you got a way to get fresh fish to big markets like San Francisco. Now you got other folks coming to fish in Monterey, in particular the Italians, not those Sicilians yet.
Yeah.
But the Genovese, who are coming across the bay from Santa Cruz and coming down from San Francisco to fish primarily for rockfish. So the Chinese, not wanting to compete with these guys, said, well, hey, we'll just fish for squid at night, because nobody wanted squid then. Squid was considered to be a junk fish. So the Italians are home sleeping, the Chinese are out fishing for squid. The Chinese had learned years before that squid are nocturnal. And you burn little pitch fires over the side of your boat, it just attracts them to the surface, and then they'll up in these big baskets and bring them onto their beach to dry. So anybody today, they've been fishing a lot of squid out there right now, or have been recently, and you can see all those boats out there fishing squid at night with those big lights out on the bay today.
Yeah.
They learned that from those 19th century Chinese fishermen. That's where that all comes from. So around the turn of the 20th century, the city of Monterey banned the drying of squid within the city limits. And if you ever smell dried squid, you actually might kind of understand why they did that. They moved all the squid drying grounds out along the Salinas Highway, those fields across the airport that we call Tarpey Flats.
Yeah.
And there are 3 large Chinese squid drying grounds out there. At this point, Sicilian fishermen began arriving after 1905. At that time, to fish sardine as a small secondary fishery. Salmon was the big fishery, and that could be a different program for you. But they came to fish sardine, and then when they're done fishing sardine, they got to fish for something else, and so they began fishing for squid, but they didn't want it because I said they thought it was a junk fish, so they just sold back to the Chinese who were drying it out on the fields out there. Particularly a guy by the name of Wang Yi. Wang Yi had the largest of the squid drying grounds. Wang Yi was the model for the character Li Chong in the book Cannery Row.
Okay, yeah. Wow.
He came to Monterey in 1919. He opened a little general store down there on Cannery Row across from where the aquarium is today. Called the Wing Chong Market. Wing Chong in Chinese, in Cantonese, roughly means beautiful, prosperous. And he sold, you name it, he sold pretty much everything in that little market there. He catered mainly to the cannery workers, and he did pretty well in that business, but he made his big money in the squid business. And to give you an idea of how well he was doing in that business, he was making in 1930 close to $30,000 a year in the squid dry business.
Wow, that's huge in 1930. Yeah.
That's a lot of money. And the name of that squid drying business was Wing Chong. So it definitely was beautiful, prosperous for Mr. Yi.
Wow, that's really great. Yeah. And
So we should back up. So you asked about the fire. So there was a lot of pressure to get the Chinese off that piece of property. As you can imagine, that piece of property was quite valuable. The Southern Pacific Railroad came in 1880 and bought out the old Monterey Railroad because they weren't financially very successful. And when the Southern Pacific bought that road out, they also bought about 8,000 acres of the Monterey Peninsula because they had this kind of weird idea they could turn Monterey into a tourist paradise. Who think such a thing?
Yeah.
That property they bought was that piece of property. And by the turn of the 20th century, they had plans to put big mansions out there. They wanted to build fancy houses and a bathhouse, a swimming pool. But the Chinese actually had a really good lease, and so they weren't going.
They were going.
They were staying, right? They offered them property all over the Monterey Peninsula. They said, why should we leave? We've been here almost 50 years. April 1906, a massive earthquake strikes San Francisco, destroys and displaces everybody that lives in San Francisco, including the Chinese community there. Where are they going to go? They came here to Monterey because they had family living in that village. So now with them not leading that village is getting bigger. So almost a month to the day of the fire, of the earthquake in San Francisco, on May 16th, 1906, there was a fire in that village. It doesn't burn the village down. It burns about a third of it down. Nobody dies in it, but they got the message. And it still took about a year to get them off the property. But when they did, a small group of them, a lot of them actually left Monterey, went up to the San Francisco area, but a small group of them went further down Cannery Row area to the Mackinac Beach area and developed a small village there that was there to the 1920s.
Yeah, the Mackinac Beach area, yeah.
So there's still Chinese descendants today here in the Monterey area from those early families.
A mysterious fire, yeah, somehow.
Yeah. We're not
Somebody,
sure about the fire.
somebody left the heater on or something. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, that's great. Tim, you offer a lot of tours in the peninsula, right? What do you do? I mean, what other tours do you offer?
I don't offer as many as I used to, but I still do a tour. It's called the Wharf Walks, which I do on the first Saturday every month. It's really a history of the wharf neighborhood and the Monterey Wharf. It really is a fishing history of Monterey and a cultural history of Monterey, really.
Yeah.
And then I actually do a tour of the Lower Presidio
Yeah.
area. And on occasion, I used to do them all the time, but on occasion I will still give tours of Cannery Row, but not that often anymore.
Yeah. Now I've taken that tour. You remember we had that group of the Presidio.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
a very interesting tour.
yeah.
I really we all enjoyed it, especially about the Indians up there. Where you were the
Yeah, thank you.
Indians or natives Indian.
Very good.
That was good. Yeah. And now, do you have a website, or how does somebody get a hold of you, Tim?
Yeah, I don't have a website anymore. I really backed off all those kind of things, but if someone's very interested, they can always email me. And my
Yeah.
email is very simple. It's Tim Sardine
Tim Sardine.
at yahoo.com.
Tim Sardine at yahoo.com.
Correct.
That's great. And also, they could always personal message me here on Facebook, and I'll make sure that we get a hold of Tim. But if you're a history buff and you love Monterey, you got to do it. It's worth it. This guy knows his stuff. Tim, I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
My pleasure.
And
Thank you.
I'm going to thank you for keeping the Monterey history alive.
All right. Appreciate it.
The old timers are disappearing, and I'm an old timer now. I'm going to, the boat is starting to take in a little bit of water, more water every year. So
I got that one, man.
yeah, so I really appreciate what you do here in the community, and I'm so happy you were here to join us today. And thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, well, that concludes our show today. I'm going to be every 3 weeks. We're going to be having a couple guests, from different areas, or all Monterey, but just different parts of the community. So in 3 weeks, I'll be back with 2 more guests. If you know anybody that would be a good guest, message me, or if you want to be a guest, message me, and we'll see you in 3 weeks. And I really appreciate everybody being on Buzzing with Cousin. Thank you. Bye.